What's up, everybody? Welcome to Collide live stream. I hope you're doing great. It is Wednesday, and I am so excited. We are. This is. It feels like this is what we do now. It feels like this is how we do Collide, which is not as good as being in person. And I wish that we could be together. I wish that we could be in person. And I could give all of you a high five or a hug or whatever. But not the case right now. We can't do that right now. So we do Collide live stream here on YouTube. And, if you're watching live, fantastic. Join along in the chat. Say hello. And then we've got some sweet games tonight. So you will not want to miss those at all. So I think we might just go ahead and get this going, if that's cool with y'all. If that's cool, we actually have a game tonight, and it's a controversial one. Okay, the topic is controversial, and it's controversial because chocolate chip versus oatmeal raisin. Air horn. All right, so here's the deal: chocolate chip, oatmeal raisin. This divides the room. This splits. Actually, really, here's what I think. I think most people like chocolate chip they prefer that over the other one, over oatmeal raisin. I like both cookies, and I have a theory about oatmeal raisin cookies, and I probably have shared this with many of you. But here's my theory. On average, when you have an oatmeal raisin cookie, it's going to be better than a chocolate chip cookie because there's less people make them. But if you make an oatmeal raisin, you probably know what you're doing. Okay, I've had a lot of bad chocolate chip cookies in my life. Okay, but they get a pass because they're chocolate chip cookies. All right, but oatmeal raisin, delicious every time. Delicious every time. Hydrate, people. Stay hydrated. Lexi said she almost ran into a wall just so she could collide with something. I do not suggest running in the wall. That does not sound fun. All right, so let's get our game started here. Just kind of how this is going to work. If you have if you're chatting along with us, if you're watching with us, please comment what you think is the answer. This game is incredibly simple, y'all. The simplest game. Basically, for most of these questions, I'm going to say, is this an oatmeal raisin cookie or a chocolate chip cookie? But here's the thing. It's a little blurred. It's hard to tell. And there's also some trivia. But it's mostly pictures of cookies, and you have to tell me whether it's oatmeal raisin or chocolate chip. So here's the first one. Here's the picture. What is this? Is this an oatmeal raisin or is this a chocolate chip cookie? Let me know in the comments right now. Oatmeal raisin or chocolate chip cookie. You can put oatmeal if you want for short, chocolate for short, whatever you want to do. Put it in there. Apparently, Marshall doesn't deserve rights now that we know that he's an oatmeal raisin stan. Oh, okay. Well, apparently you don't deserve rights if you like oatmeal raisin cookies. So let me know. Is this a... it's supposed to be blurry. That's the point. But is this an oatmeal raisin or is this a chocolate chip cookie? Vanessa, what's up? All right, so Billy, what up, Billy? He says chocolate chip. Kendra says chocolate chip. Lexi says chocolate chip. And this is actually an oatmeal raisin. And this is why chocolate chip cookie fans hate oatmeal raisin cookies, because they disguise themselves as chocolate chip cookies sometimes. If you just quickly glance, if you just gave one of these, you would have thought chocolate chip cookie. Grab it, take a bite. What is this? It's actually better. It's oatmeal raisin. All right. Okay. Well, Shelby is joining us under his mom's account. But welcome, Shelby. I think we're so glad you're here. So glad you made it. Here's the second question. What is this? Oatmeal raisin or chocolate chip? Oatmeal raisin or chocolate chip cookie? What is this? Let me see it from you. Oatmeal raisin or chocolate chip? What do you think? Want to hear what you think. Let's. I know there's a delay, which is unfortunate. All right, Shelby says it's oatmeal. What do you think, everybody? This is why Kendra has trust issues. All right. So Kendra says chocolate chip. The answer to this one is chocolate chip. This is a chocolate chip cookie. That is a rather large chocolate chip cookie. It looks like it's on an entire plate. So, you know, that's a big one. That's a big one. So, question 3. What are these cookies? What are we looking at here? Chocolate chip or oatmeal raisin? Chocolate chip or oatmeal raisin? Put your comments there in the comment box. Let me know what you think. Chocolate chip or oatmeal raisin? This is our third plate of cookies. Third plate of cookies. Is it chocolate chip or oatmeal raisin? Lexi says she would love an extra large chocolate chip cookie. We've gotten 2 oatmeal so far. And the answer is chocolate chip. Chocolate chip. They look a little different. They kind of look oatmeal-y. This one was deceptive. But that's the name of the game, right? That's the name of the game. All right. Here's another cookie. Which one is this? Chocolate chip or oatmeal raisin? It might help if you squint. Maybe you get like this. All right. Billy thinks that oatmeal is the worst cookie. Wow. So much hate for the oatmeal cookie. Does this mean I'm an old person if I like oatmeal raisin cookies? What about oatmeal cream pies? Those are like oatmeal raisin but without the raisin, and then you put some cream in between. People like those. Those are good. Why can't there be some room for oatmeal raisin cookies? You know, what's the deal? Why can't there be room for that? All right. Question 4. Let's put a number next to your answer so I can see. Billy says chocolate chip on this one. Kendra says oatmeal. Lexi says they're probably chocolate chip oatmeal cookies in the last one. They're not. They were just chocolate chip. All right. Question 4. This cookie is oatmeal raisin. The little sombrero celebration. Oh, man. Okay, here we go. Next set of cookies. These are some store-bought cookies. They're kind of hard to tell what they are. You can kind of like maybe make a guess, maybe kind of look at them. This is question 5. All right? Question 5 now. What do they look like to you? Do they look like chocolate chip or do they look like oatmeal raisin? Chocolate chip or oatmeal raisin? If you said, well, Autumn loves oatmeal raisin. Well, there you go. Autumn is very wise, you know. For question 5, if you said chocolate chip, you would be incorrect because these are oatmeal raisin. Oatmeal raisin. All right. Question 5 is a trivia question. You have to answer chocolate chip or oatmeal raisin. Which has more calories? This is question 6. Make sure to put a 6 next to it. Question 6. Which has more calories? Oatmeal raisin or chocolate chip? I want to know what you think. Which one has more calories? Do you know? Can you guess? Do you have a clue? Question 6. Sometimes I feel like I'm speaking to a wall. Wait, I am, but there's a camera in between. It's like I feel like the stream is extra laggy today. Okay, question 6. Kendra says oatmeal. Lexi says chocolate chip. Lexi, I feel like you should know the answer to this because you're in that culinary class. You're in the baking, cooking, let's make delicious Chinese and Mexican food and then not invite Marshall class. That's the class you're in. So We see Kendra says oatmeal has more calories. Billy and Lexi say chocolate chip. The answer is, of course, chocolate chip, because duh, chocolate. Oatmeal's like somewhat healthy, right? All right, so next question is, which has more sodium? This is question 7. Which has more sodium? Is it chocolate chip cookies or oatmeal raisin? Kendra says this game makes her dislike oatmeal cookies, oatmeal raisin cookies even more than she did. We make meals, not cookies, the whole time. I know you make meals. I know that. I said you make delicious food. And you don't count it, you just eat it. So, question 7, which has more sodium, oatmeal raisin or chocolate chip? What is your answer to this question? Kendra says, I don't care. The answer is oatmeal raisin, tossing the salt shakers up in the air. So, there you go. Question 8. Question 8. Which of these? Are they oatmeal raisin or are they chocolate chip? I think the oatmeal raisin guy is the funniest thing about this because he wears different outfits sometimes. Like on this one, he's wearing a chocolate chip hat. Like he's like I'm really supposed to be chocolate chips. So what do you think it is? Question 8. And look at the chocolate chip. He's like glaring down at him like, you act like you're one of me. So what is this? Oatmeal raisin or chocolate chip? Question 8. Kendra says chocolate chip. Lexi says chocolate chip. And Billy says oatmeal. It is chocolate chip. Chocolate chip. I feel like this one was trying to get you to say oatmeal raisin, but it was just a little too puffy. A little too puffy to be oatmeal raisin. Oatmeal raisin doesn't really rise like a normal chocolate chip cookie does. All right. So, what's up, Linnea? Welcome to the stream. Glad you're here. We are playing a game called Chocolate Chip or Oatmeal Raisin, where each one of these slides you have to say, is the answer chocolate chip or is it oatmeal raisin? We have another trivia question. What percent of Americans say chocolate chip is their favorite? What percentage of Americans say chocolate chip is their favorite? We're looking for a percentage. So this is not chocolate chip or oatmeal raisin. This is, I need a percentage. So for question 9, put a percentage of Americans that say chocolate chip is their favorite. Now, this is a chocolate chip cookie in the background that I can get behind because it's got some kosher salt kind of sprinkled on top of that. Salt, important ingredient. Isn't that right, Lexi? Important ingredient in cookies. You know, I think it was Angie Henshaw one time made some cookies. It was either Angie or Belinda made some cookies, had too much salt in them, and you could taste it. You could really taste it. But let me tell you, I ate them because they were still pretty good. All right, Kendra says 60%. Lexi says 60%. Billy, confident, 95%. He's saying that I'm in the 5%. I don't even know if I'd say that oatmeal raisin is my favorite. Because I still like chocolate chip. The answer is 53%. 53% of people say that chocolate chip is their favorite. Yeah, you don't want too much salt in your cookies. Last question. Here we go. Look at these. This is a tough one. Is this chocolate chip cookies or oatmeal raisin cookies? Question 10, final question. Chocolate chip cookies or oatmeal raisin cookies? That was like the percentage game we played last week. Guespionage. Fun game. Yeah, so those who put 60%, you were pretty close. Lexi and Kendra tied for the win. There. Linnea, Shelby, we'd love to have you answer with us. So, question 10. Are these chocolate chip cookies or are these oatmeal raisin cookies? Yes, they're blurred on purpose. You're supposed to try to guess without being able to see exactly details. So, Lexi says chocolate chip for sure. Billy says chocolate chip. Lexi wants to back her answer up with I'm going to cry if it's oatmeal. Kendra says chocolate chip. The correct answer is oatmeal raisin. They look like some good oatmeal raisin cookies too. I'd eat like that whole plate right there. I really would. Those are delicious. Those look really good. Those might be the best looking cookies in the game. All right. So that was chocolate chip versus oatmeal raisin. And today I asked Kendra Hoover, who's in the chat, shout out Kendra, if she would come on and give a testimony, but didn't really work out this week. And next week we're actually going to have her on to do a testimony. So instead of Kendra's testimony this week, we're actually going to have a second game called What is Behind the Mask? What? Crazy. Just crazy. 2 games, 1 stream. Nuts. Absolutely nuts. So, this game, really simple. We show you a celebrity. They're wearing a mask. Obviously a Photoshop mask, not a real one. And then we're going to ask, what's behind the mask? And then you have to guess between multiple choice answers, what's behind that mask? All right, so really simple game, really easy. A, B, or C for pretty much every answer. So question 1, what is the status of Chris Pratt's mouth behind this mask? Is it A, closed, B, open, C, opened with tongue out? What do you think? What do you think? What's behind the mask? What is behind the mask? A, B, or C? What is Chris Pratt doing with his mouth? What is he doing? Billy says it says what, not who. Okay. Did I say who's behind the mask? Okay. If I did, my bad. So, what is behind the mask? Not who's behind the mask. Thank you, Billy. So, Lexi said B. Billy says A. Kendra says A. The answer is A. His mouth is closed. I know what you're thinking. This game, so deep, so complex. All right, next question. Which Chris will you find behind this mask? Will it be Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, or Chris Pine? A, B, or C? This is question 2. A, B, or C? On that last one, points go to Kendra for guessing that his mouth was closed. Which Chris do we find behind this mask? Is it Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, or Chris Pine? I guess it would help if you knew who all 3 of those people were, which I assume some of you do. Lexi says it is Chris Pine. Billy says it's Chris Pine. Kendra says Chris Pine, and you are correct. This is, in fact, Chris Pine. Yeah, the hat added to make it a little tougher. I don't know how tough it actually was. All right, so what will we find Kanye doing behind this mask? Is he A, snarling, B, straight-faced, or C, smiling? That's hard because Kanye is all over the place with his facial features, you know. And those eyes, they could be any one of them. I don't know what he's doing. What is Kanye doing behind that mask? What is behind that mask? What is behind it? I don't know. Do you know? I feel like I'm looking deep into Kanye's soul. Anyway, I have 2 screens this week. That's actually what's enabling us to play this game or these games using a different software. Anyway, not really important. All you have to know is when I look over here, I'm looking at another screen. So, Lexi says... okay, Kendra says B, straight face. Billy says C, and Lexi says straight face as well. The answer is straight face. Straight face. He wasn't making any face, he was just making a straight face. All right, so if you guessed B, you got that correct. Next one. What will we find Lady Gaga doing behind this mask? Is she A, puckering, B, gasping, or C, smirking? What is Lady Gaga doing behind that mask? Is she showing her poker face? That song is old now. That song came out when I was in like college. So anyway, Kanye rarely smiles. He rarely smiles. It's true. What do you think? Question 4. What is Lady Gaga doing? Lexi says she's puckering. Kendra says she's gasping. And Billy also says gasping. The answer is puckering. Puckering. All right, next question. What is the status of Jennifer Lawrence's mouth behind this mask? Is it closed, open, or open with tongue out? What do you think? Write your answer down in the chat. Kanye only smiles when singing about Chick-fil-A. Accurate. Accurate. What is Jennifer Lawrence's... What is the status of Jennifer Lawrence's mouth behind this mask? Do you know? Do you know? Lexi says B, that it is open. Billy says A, that it is closed. The answer is it is open with her tongue out. This is a fascinating game. We're looking deep into the souls of men and women. What will we discover on Brad Pitt's face when we remove the mask? Is he clean shaven? Does he have a beard? Or will he have a mustache? Who knows? What movie was this taken before? What role was he doing? He's had all 3 of those. What is behind this mask? Question 6. What is behind this mask? Who knows? I know. And you will soon. You will soon. That was not a Photoshop. That was a real photo. I assume. Kendra says A. Clean shave. Everyone says clean shave. He actually has a little mustache. A little mustache there in that photo. All right. Next question. How many teeth will be missing on this kid when we remove the mask? How many teeth will be missing? You have no way to know the answer to this question. You have no way. We could have had a picture of Wyatt Sutton. How many teeth get knocked out at camp? That could have been the question. Poor Wyatt. Poor Wyatt. We love you, Wyatt. All right. What do you think? How many teeth will be missing on this kid when we remove the mask? You tell me. 1, 2, or 4. 1, 2, or 4. Billy says 4. Lexi says 4. The answer is 2. Just 2 teeth missing from this kid. You know, there you go. All right, next question. What type of mouth does this emoji have behind the mask? This is a tricky one. Is it A, a straight face, B, a half frown, or C, no mouth? A, B, or C? What is the answer? All right. The answer is... Mr. Coleman said 5. That is funny. That is funny. All right. Kendra says B, Billy says A. C, no mouth. The answer is no mouth. No mouth on this emoji. Not a mouth there. Tricky one. Tricky one. All right. We're looking at a dog. Pull off the mask. And what will you find in this dog's mouth? A biscuit, a bird, or a pacifier? Ooh, this is a tricky one. What will you find in this dog's mouth? What will you find? What is in the pacifier? I just said what's in the pacifier. All right. What's in the mouth? It is a pacifier. I just kind of gave away the answer. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. I feel like an idiot. Maybe you didn't catch that. I don't know. It's definitely a pacifier, which makes this a really cute photo. A really cute photo. All right. So last question. Last question. What topping is missing behind the mask of this deluxe cheeseburger? Is it mayo, bacon, or onion? Which of these ingredients is not behind the mask? Which of these ingredients not behind the mask on this deluxe cheeseburger? All right. Billy says B. Mr. Coleman says B. Lexi says C. The answer is, in fact, B. There is no bacon on this deluxe cheeseburger. So, if you said B, you are correct. Let me know how many you got right. Put it down there in the the chat. Let me know how many you got. We are done with our games for the night, but that does not mean that the fun has stopped, that we are done with anything like that, because we have a lesson. Tonight is our second week. It's our second week of our In His Image series, and so we have a let's see. Okay, I'm using this new software and it's kind of getting used to it and all that kind of thing. Anyway, all right, there we go. Lexi says she thinks she got 5 right. Kendra says she got 42 correct. That doesn't seem right. 42 seems not correct, but I don't know. All right, trying to navigate this whole business. All right. Sorry for the. Oh, Lexi also got 42 correct. Good to know. Good to know. And Billy doesn't know how many he got. Well, this is great. This is great. Everyone's a winner tonight. Everyone is a winner. Oh, man. All right. Well, so we'll go ahead and get started. I hope that you enjoyed those games. I hope that you're having a great Wednesday night. Like I said, this is week 2 of our In His Image series. And last week, we started off the series by talking about just this whole idea that, we as people, right? We are not just bodies and we're not just souls. That in fact, we as people are both body and soul, right? And that we are made in God's image. That everything about us is made to reflect who God. We are a reflection of who God is. Now, do we look? what we look like, is that exactly what God looks like? Probably not, right? But the fact that we were created uniquely among all of creation and differently, that we are created in the image of God. No other part of creation, no other animal, no trees, water, ground, like whatever you can think of, nothing else, right? Dogs, cats, giraffes, none of those things were created in the image of God, just humans, right? And so we talked about this idea, we talked about worldview and how because of this, right, because that we are created in the image of God, Christians have a unique worldview that says our body, right, our body and our souls are one, right? We are one being, and our body matters and our soul matters. Who we are as people matters because we're made in the image of God. Now, last week we talked about this idea of a person and body divide. Now, this is a false dichotomy. I will say that right off the bat. This is not something that Christians believe, right? This is not a Christian worldview, right? This is a secular worldview. They believe that the person, right, the person on the upper level, is actually can be separated out, right, from the body that we live in, right? That the person that we are isn't tied to our body, right? We can say, like a secular worldview would say, hey, who I am as a person isn't defined by any physical characteristic of my body, and it's not limited to the things of my body, right? I can be what I want, I can do what I want, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because it's just a body, it's just matter, right? This is not just a secular worldview, but it's also a materialist worldview, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. What it means to be a materialist. Now, the quick summary of like a materialist might be somebody that says that there is no meaning in the universe. There's no greater meaning to anything. That in fact, meaning is not a thing that we can actually achieve. In fact, it's up to the individual to find meaning, right? Whatever brings you pleasure is your meaning and your purpose. There is no greater meaning outside of you that you can look to. That this is the worldview that's driven by there is no greater power, there's no it's just all chance, and it's all material, right? There's nothing spiritual, there's nothing greater than us, right? And in fact, materialism says that we as humans are no greater than any other animal or tree or plant or anything, right? That we are all just matter, right? And because we're all just matter and we're all on the same level, then there's no right or wrong. There's no moralistic driving force behind anything. Now this is a materialism point of view, right? And so tonight we're actually going to talk about a little bit of that idea and how that plays into sex, right? So tonight we're talking. So this whole series is about our bodies. It's about God making us in His image, and part of that is that God made sex, right? God made sex. It was not something that humans discovered one day and that were like, hey, here's this thing we can do, right? That's not how it worked. Sex does not surprise God because God made sex, right? And so today we're going to talk about some things, and we're going to say we're going to talk about some things that you don't think you might talk about in church, but we're going to talk about those tonight because it matters. Because sex is everywhere in our culture, right? And to think that church shouldn't be a part of that conversation is to say that God doesn't care about what you do sexually with your body. But in fact, in this series, we want to say that God cares very much about what you do with your body when it comes to sex and sexuality. So tonight we're talking about sex. And another dichotomy that I want to point out, right, is this one right here. The personal and the physical, right? This is another dichotomy that says the things that you feel personally, right, your emotional attachments, the people you care for, your personal feelings, right, and particularly about sex, the personal side, the relational side, right, is separable. Like it's you can separate that out if that's a word that I can use. You can separate that out from the physical. Okay? You can say that what you think personally, what the relationships you want to have, those interpersonal relationships you want to have, right? Don't have to be connected to the physical, which in this case, sex, right? So, secular worldview says that it's okay. It's okay to have the physical, the lower level, the physical, which is sex, right? Without personal, without having any kind of relationship. This is a more complex way of saying hookup culture, right? Hookup culture, is this idea, right, that you can have sex with somebody, no strings attached, right? And this is very much built into this personal physical divide. This personal physical and again, I'm talking. I talked about this last week, but there's a book called "Love Thy Body" by Nancy Pearcey. She talks about this this dichotomy in her book. And if you want to know more, if you want to read more, I highly recommend that book. It's a fantastic book. Might be more on a high school level than a middle school level, but the whole idea of hookup culture today, the idea that you can have a sexual relationship with someone, no strings attached, is built on this personal physical divide. This thing that says we can separate out our personal feelings about somebody and the physical, who we have relations with, right? Now, this, like we said last week when we talked about the body person dichotomy, this again is a false dichotomy, right? We want to say as Christians, right, that our worldview, which we form based on what we see in Scripture, actually points to that when it comes to sexual relations, right, when it comes to sex, you cannot separate out the personal and the physical. That God actually made us in a way that it is incredibly difficult and unnatural for us to have the physical side of a relationship without the personal. And we'll actually go into that a little more, and we'll talk about that. But I think this is so interesting that culture today wants to say that hey, I can have sex. It's just this physical thing. It's this thing I do. I get pleasure, but I don't have to have a relationship. There's no strings attached. And if and I'll be honest. I'm 30 years old. I haven't been in high school in a long time. I'm sure this kind of thing happens in high school. I'm sure it does, right? And it may even happen in middle school. Heaven forbid. I hope it doesn't, right? I hope it doesn't happen. I hope that nobody takes part in this, right? I don't think this is a good plan for you emotionally and physically. I just don't, right? And we're going to talk about kind of what God would like to see for sex, what He designed it to be, right here in a second. But let's talk a little bit more about this. So certainly in college today, young adults who are in college or out of college or whatever have this idea that they can live this way, that hookup culture, you can have the no strings attached like sexual relationships. This is something that is very prominent in culture, right? But I think people, even though they do this, I think they realize in the background of their minds that it doesn't actually work, that you can't actually do this way, right? There's a song that's relatively, it's not, I'm not gonna say it's new, but it's not old, and it's a song called "Sex," fitting title, by Eden, and you may have heard of this song. And there's a line in the song, and the song is the guy singing. He's talking about a relationship, or not a relationship. He's talking about a girl that he knows that he has sex with, and then there's a line, and the whole song builds to this point where he goes, you know what? I know this was supposed to be just physical. This was just supposed to be physical, but I hate to say it, that I actually think that I brought the personal into this relationship. I feel like I've brought the personal. In fact, being with this girl, sleeping with this girl, has actually made him have feelings for her. Surprise, right? This is the opposite of what materialist secular worldview says, right? It says you can have the physical without the personal. And he tried and he failed. And here is this is you if you've heard the song, you'll know this line. He says, "And we're just having sex. No, I would never call it love, but love," right? And he goes, "Oh no, I think I'm catching feelings," right? And so it's a kind of a catchy song, and it kind of builds up to this point where he says, and this is like kind of a part of our cultural vocab now, is this idea that I'm catching feelings, right? He was in something that was originally meant to just be physical, but it turned out that he couldn't be in the physical hookup without forming these feelings, right? It was he says we were just having sex, but then it actually turned out that I kind of had to feel I started having feelings for this person. And so this is proof, like our culture even acknowledges this, even as much as they want to say, hey, hookups are fine, right? You know, and in the 60s we talked about free love and all this, and that really hasn't ever gone away. It's kind of looks different and that kind of thing now. But even though culture wants to say, hey, let's hook up, no strings attached, no feelings, it's just the physical, it's just for pleasure, culture itself can't help but say, hey, you know what? This still happens, right? We still have these moments where where we meant it just to be physical, but there actually is something deeper that comes from that, right? And what I want us to see is that God actually designed sex to be that way. So we're going to talk about three hormones, right? We're going to talk about three hormones that are found in us as humans, right? That they're actually you can kind of look at these and go, man, it's almost as if like they're there for a reason, right? That maybe God put these hormones in us to do something specific, right? So the first thing I want us to talk about is oxytocin. Oxytocin is a hormone, right, that is found in men and women, but especially women, right? And it's something that when scientists first kind of were looking at oxytocin, looking at that hormone, it's a hormone that's released during childbirth and also during breastfeeding for women. This is called the attachment hormone, right? Because it's a hormone that's released that lets you feel attachment for your child, right? It's supposed to help you feel an attachment for your child, so you take care of them, that you'll nurture them, you love them, you'll give the child the support they need to survive, right? That's something that happens in us that God put there so that we would be good parents, right? So that mothers would be good mothers. But scientists have also found that that's not just involved in breastfeeding and childbearing, that in fact, it's also released during sex, right? That this hormone is released during sex so that women and men, but this is mostly in women, is this attachment. They're developing this attachment during sex, and it's because this hormone is released. So God actually designed our bodies that when we have sex, we are growing an emotional attachment to the person we're having sex with. Well, that would be really great if this was a person that you intended to spend the rest of your life with, right? This would be really great for a marriage, right? And so, Lexi says, "Ooh, science lesson." Now, I'm not a scientist, but I've done a little bit of homework, right? And but follow me here for a second, right? And so oxytocin is this attachment hormone, mainly found in women, but also found in men, that's released during sex, right? That gives an attachment. Like we develop an attachment with the people, with the person that we are having sex with, right? How interesting, right? And the next one is vasopressin, right? This is a hormone found predominantly in males, right? In men. And this is actually dubbed the monogamy molecule, right? This helps when this is released during sex in men. that helps them. It's designed to bond them with the person they're having sex with, right? That's the idea. And so the idea here is that this hormone, released in men mainly, right, is is uh, is meant for them to be bonded, right? And it's called the monogamy molecule because it bonds them with the person they're having sex with. And if you're bonding with that person, right, you're more likely to have sex with that same person. This is why it's called monogamy, right? But if you look at it from a Christian worldview and go, hey, uh, if God said that sex is good, sex is for marriage, right? And then he put these hormones in men and in women that on the women's side develops attachment, right, to your partner, to your husband, and then the husband has this hormone that's also bonding them to their wife. Wow. It looks like you can't help but have a personal connection and not just a physical connection with the person that you're having sex with. Right? And so when we look at how God designed us, we are not made to separate the personal, the emotional side of sex from the physical side. We are chemically the chemicals, the hormones in our body are designed to help us put those two together, right? Isn't that interesting? Now, there's another thing there's another chemical I want to talk about called dopamine. Now, tonight we are mainly talking about sex, but we cannot talk about sex without quickly coming to the conversation of pornography, right? Now, dopamine is a reward, right? It interacts with the pleasure and reward sensors in your brain, right? And so to this is, I might jump around here for a second, but let me say this. Now, did God create sex for husband and wives? Absolutely. That's why he made sex. He did not make sex for outside of marriage, right? We can see this kind of in nature with these hormones that help bond, and form relationships, not just physical things, but emotional relationships inside of this sexual intercourse, right? And so when we look at pornography, right? Some people might say, well, what's wrong with pornography? Like, I'm not actually having sex with somebody. I'm just using it for, maybe arousal or sexual, enjoyment, stimulation, whatever, right? Well, what's wrong with it? No one, I'm not actually having sex with someone, but we'll talk about later that sexual morality isn't just about, well, did you have sex with somebody, right? Even though that's definitely in it. But this pornography perverts what God intended to be a good thing, right? We take what God intended to be a good thing, sexual relations inside of marriage, and we take it outside of that. And now, again, here's this personal and physical divide. Pornography is purely intended to be a physical thing, right? It's supposed to be, hey, you watch it, it brings you pleasure. Hey, secular culture would say, hey, good for that, right? That's a good thing. You should seek your own pleasure. Go out and find that. There is no moral compass. Do whatever. But we know that there is greater meaning in life, right? That the materialism is not the answer. That our truth comes from something greater than just, well, whatever brings me pleasure, right? And so when we look at pornography, right, this is saying, hey, I want to just do this physical pleasure. That's what I want. I don't want to do anything with the personal. I just want this physical pleasure, right? Well, pornography is still engaging with your brain, right? It's still engaging with your brain, but in a little bit different way, right? Because there's this thing called dopamine, right? And this gives you, so what happens is you do something that brings you pleasure, right? You watch pornography, it brings you pleasure, and then you get this dopamine rush, right? Which is, it's a reward, right? It's a chemical reward in your brain. And now your brain says, oh, I want pornography, and when I get pornography, I'll get this dopamine rush, and it's a reward, right? Bring me pleasure, and then you get this dopamine reward, right? And this is how people get addicted to pornography. Is actually what happens is the more pornography you look at, you get more and more dopamine that goes through your brain as part of this pleasure and reward system, right? And then after a while, these receptors in your brain, the dopamine receptors, start shutting off because your brain's like, hey, we're getting too much dopamine right now. And so we have to start shutting some of these receptors off so we don't get as much, right? And then you go look at pornography, and the thing that brought you pleasure before, the thing that brought you this dopamine rush before, isn't doing it because the receptors aren't triggering. So you have to go find something more. You have to keep going after more. This is exactly how drug addicts, right? People who do heroin, this is the same kind of thing that's happening in their brain. It's happening with people who are addicted to pornography. So when you actually have these receptors, right, that are going like this, they make these neural pathways. And these neural pathways, they widen the more often you do the same thing that creates this dopamine rush. And so this process is called neuroplasticity. And what you're actually doing is you're training your brain. You're saying, and it's literally creating these pathways. You're changing your brain when you do this so much. You're saying, like, I want to make this so easy that when I see pornography, it like sets this trigger off, and then like my brain knows and goes, I need that. And then you look at pornography, and then it like you get that rush, right? And so, long science lesson to explain why pornography is addictive and why dopamine plays a role in that, and why we can take this all back to this is not just something physical that you do for your pleasure, but it actually is something you're creating in your brain, which is physical. I'm not going to say it's not, but you're creating this thing in your brain, and then because you're looking at so much pornography, right? You're actually starting to pick up things that you subconsciously might not have thought before, right? Maybe you start to see women or men or bodies as just objects and not people, right? Because pornography is not just a male issue. We also have women that have issues with pornography, right? But you start to see people as objects and not just, or you start to see them just as objects and not as people, right? Your brain starts to go, oh, like there's an image, there's a pornographic image. That's an object that I like to see, right? And you're not thinking of them as people. But God, what did he do? He created us in his image as people. So these are all very interesting things from a scientific standpoint that show us that sex actually is something that God created, right? Created for our good, and sometimes we twist that for evil. So another thing that this secular or materialist worldview will say about sex, right? We've already talked about how they say, well, it's about seeking pleasure, and whatever brings you pleasure, you should go for it. And that means sex, right? There's a lot of big thinkers in the world over the past many centuries who've kind of talked about the idea of free sex, right? This is the idea that, you should have sex with, whoever you want, as long as it brings you pleasure. And this is, completely against the Christian worldview, which is, hey, sex is for marriage, right? Sex is between husband and wife for marriage. That's how God intended it. But a lot of big thinkers think Freud, think Sanger, think whoever you want, right? All these big thinkers from a secular materialist worldview say, actually, what they want to say is they think they're actually elevating sex to something that they think is bigger than it is, but it actually kind of demeans sex to make it worth less. And here's what they actually, they will actually say is sex is a religion. Some people, some thinkers say this. They say this explicitly. They go, sex is a religion. That the pursuit of sexual pleasure is actually the most important thing in life. And there are people today who live this way, right? They might not say it. They may say it, right? You probably know people who go, man, that's one of the most important things is to find pleasure in sex, right? And they might go out and they might take part in hookup culture or maybe through pornography or whatever it is. But to them, the most important thing in life is sex. And they say sex is a religion. Now, God made sex, and sex is a good thing that God made, but it is not a religion. It's not even the most important thing in life, right? A Christian worldview would say it's a good thing, it's a significant thing, but it's nowhere near the most important thing, right? And as teenagers, right, and that's that I'm talking to you as a teenager. As teenagers, it's everywhere, right? It's everywhere. It's on your phone. It's in the music. It's at your school. It's in your friend group, and it's everywhere. And it may seem like this huge thing, and it may seem like you're going, well, I feel like I should be having sex, or I feel like if I'm not having sex, maybe I'm this weird person, or maybe, you're going, I feel like I don't really see a big deal with having sex, and I want to say that as a Christian, if you're a Christian, that it is a big deal, and that God intended sex to be a good thing for you when you're married. Right? And so that's what we want to look at. So we're going to kind of jump into some scripture. And one thing I want us to see, and kind of in this realm of sex as a religion, right, is in Romans chapter 1, verses 24 through 25. And then this is what Paul writes about. He's writing to the church in Rome. And this is what he says. He says, therefore God gave them up in their lust of their hearts to impurity. So real quick, he's writing to the church at Rome, and he's talking about people, like people in general, people who don't know God, who maybe have seen some things that could convince them of God, but they've kind of gone the other way. And here's what he says: therefore God gave them up in the lust of their hearts to impurity, to the dishonoring of their bodies among themselves, because they, here we go, here's the here, because they exchanged the truth of God, the truth about God, for a lie, and worshipped and served the Creator served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. So what I want us to see here is this is exactly what Paul is saying here is exactly what the opposite, right? He's speaking directly to this idea: sex is a religion, right? He's saying they, instead of worshiping God, they're worshiping His creation. They're worshiping His creature, right? And you might be like, maybe you don't maybe you haven't thought about it this way, but to worship sex, to say sex is a religion, to say sex is the most important thing in life, you're worshiping a creation of God, and not God instead, not God Himself. So to see sex as the most important thing in life is contradictory to a Christian worldview that says, no, God is worthy of our worship and all of our attention and all of our focus, right? He created sex. Sex is good. He wants people to have sex who are married, but we're not to worship the created thing. We're supposed to worship the Creator, right? So that's kind of where I wanted us to start. In Scripture tonight, we've got several passages, but to talk about, even Paul, even in his book, his letter to Rome, even addresses this idea that people are seeing the created things of God as more important than God, right? When in fact, we need to worship God. So the next thing I want us to say, there's three things that I want us to learn about sex tonight. There's three things that I want us to learn, and this is important to how we see sex and how we see us as created beings of God, right? And how we view our body. And the first thing, here's what I want to see. Sex was made for intimacy, pleasure, and procreation, right? Not one of those three, not two of those three, but all three of those things. Sex was made for intimacy, pleasure, and procreation, right? God didn't just make sex for intimacy and pleasure. He didn't just make it for pleasure and procreation. He didn't just make it for intimacy and procreation and like, well, you're not supposed to enjoy it. No, no. He made it for all of these things. You're supposed to enjoy it. It's supposed to create more intimate relationship with your spouse, and you're supposed to do it to make babies, right? And so here's where we're starting. We're going to go all the way back to Genesis again. We were there just last week, but we're going to be in Genesis chapter 2, verses 24 and 25, talking about intimacy, right? There, and it says this. This is Genesis. This is right after God created man and woman. You know, and actually in Genesis 2, it talks about there's two accounts of creation. There's Genesis 1 and there's Genesis 2, right? And they're kind of unique. They have some interesting things, but we can learn a little bit about God as creator from both of them. We focused on Genesis 1 last week. This week we're going to look at 2, and what happened in Genesis chapter 2 is God made man and then said, hey, you're alone. You need someone. And he made all these animals. And he goes, none of them are a suitor. None of them are, and then he took the rib from Adam and made Eve. And then this is where we pick up the story. It says, therefore, so just after God made Eve and Adam, and then this is him, this is God, but also this is the instruction that we learn from this part of creation. This is so interesting. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. And the man and his wife were both naked and not ashamed. So, the first thing I want us to see here is a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Right? This is intimate language. Right? Intimate language that suggests and instructs that a husband and wife are no longer two people living separate lives, but one. They are one unit. Right? They're still physically, yes, two people, but they are one unit, right? Living life together, and this is intimate language, right? The two shall become one flesh. And there's a little bit of imagery here about just to be honest, like becoming one flesh. That's, you could say there's something sexual about that, right? And later on in Genesis chapter 4, we're not going to look at it, but in Genesis 4 verse 1, it actually says that Adam knew Eve, and they bore a child named Cain, right? And so in that text, the way that the author used to explain that they had sex was that they knew each other, right? That and that's intimate language to say that they knew, right? They had sex, that they knew each other. And that's the word in Hebrew, that's yada, and it means to know, and it's used other times. It's also used in Scripture to say that God knew certain people, right? Not to insist that God had sex with them, but there was that intimate connection, right? And so this is God and the author here writing and saying, hey, listen, husbands and wives should be intimate, right? And sex is part of that intimacy. So sex was made for intimacy in addition to pleasure and procreation. Now, the next passage that I want us to look at is about pleasure and why we see that sex is about pleasure. Now, this is from the book Song of Solomon, which is about a man and a woman who, and they're riding back and forth, they're talking about the other person, and it is very, explicit language at times, right? And it talks about sexual things. This is in the Bible. You can go read this, right? This is in your Bible. And some people would say, well, this is really about how God loves, Israel. This is the relationship of God and Israel. That's what some people think, but that it's allegorical. But I would say that this is real language, right? This is a man and a woman, a husband and wife who love each other, right? And they're writing passionately about how much they love each other, right? And actually in this verse, we're going to see how sex can be pleasurable, right? And that Scripture actually makes no bones about it. And it says this, Song of Solomon chapter 2, verse 3. And this is the woman writing about her husband. It says this: as an apple tree among the trees of the forest, so is my beloved among the young men. So she's saying, my beloved, my husband, really stands out. I think he's, just he's better looking than everybody else, right? To her, he stands out. And it says this: with great delight, I sat in his shadow, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. This is an explicit book. I'm not going to touch what that could even mean, but here's what I'll say. What we can surely get from this is that she finds pleasure from her spouse, right? And that sex between the husband and wife, is supposed to be pleasurable, right? God made it to be that way. And so what I want us to see is that pleasure is not something that we as Christians should say, well, that shouldn't be part of sex. No. If anyone tries to tell you that pleasure is not part of sex, that's false. God made it to be pleasurable. He made it to be intimate between a husband and wife. He made it to be pleasurable between a husband and wife, right? Now, the third thing is this: procreation, right? And we're going to go back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 28, and it says this, and this is back in the chapter 1, creation verses, and God blessed them. This is actually right after where we stopped reading the other day. It said, and God blessed them, and God said to them, this is after, Adam and Eve, God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. So, God's first command to Adam and Eve as a couple is to, hey, be fruitful and multiply, right? And then you have dominion over everything, right? He basically said, hey, go live your life and make babies, right? So I want us to see that sex is for intimacy, it's for pleasure, and it's for procreation. And if you lack any of those, right, I don't think that's a biblical view of what sex is for, right? But sex is for all three of those things inside of the confines of marriage. That's what God made it, and it's a wonderful thing, right? It's a good thing. Now, what happens, right, when we don't realize, when we don't live out what sex is for, right? Like, what does Scripture actually say about, like, how do we, like, when we say that, like, sex is for married people, like, if these verses haven't helped you see that's I want us to look at it's something that Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians. It's very, very helpful for us to understand how serious God is about sex and how serious he takes it for us as people, right? And then it's not just a physical thing that we can separate from emotion. It's not just an emotion. Like, it's both of these things, right? We can't separate the two. So we're going to be in 1 Corinthians 6, 12 through 20. And it says this: all things are lawful for me. This is a quote, so he's kind of just like, here's the thing, saying all things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful, right? Okay, seems wise. All things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful, right? Okay, just because I can do something doesn't mean I should, right? All things are lawful for me, but I will not be dominated by anything, okay? Right? Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should, doesn't mean you should let it consume you, right? And then he goes to this, he starts talking about food, right? He says, 13, food is meant for the stomach, and the stomach for food, right? And God will destroy both one and the other. The body is not meant, so you're like, okay, food, why are you talking about this? He's basically saying, hey, food has a purpose, right? It's for your stomach, right? It's to feed you. It has a purpose. But hey, at the end of the day, both those things are going away. Let's move on, right? So it's like, wow, okay, this is interesting. And then he takes a hard shift and he starts talking about the body. He says the body, right? The body is not meant for sexual immorality, but for the Lord, and the Lord for the body. So here we are talking about our body, right? Our bodies, God made our bodies not for sexual immorality. He didn't say God didn't make our souls for immorality. He says our body. right? God cares about our physical bodies, right? He says, your bodies are not meant for sexual immorality, but for the Lord, and the Lord for the body. Again, here is Paul emphasizing, right? Jesus, we looked at Jesus and talking about the importance of the whole person, your body, heart, soul, mind, all these things, right? And then now we see Paul saying that God cares about your physical body and not just your soul, right? And so he says the body is not meant for sexual immorality, but for the Lord, and the Lord for the body. And then he goes this, and God raised the Lord and will also raise us up by his power. So he's making another emphasis that our physical bodies will be raised up by the Lord. Our bodies matter. And he continues, right? He's talking about sexual immorality again. He says, do you not know that your bodies are members of Christ? Did you know that? That your body, if you're a Christian, if you're a believer, your body is a member of Christ. That's a game changer, right? If we realize that our bodies are not our own, right? They're actually Christ. It goes, shall I then take the members of Christ and make them members of a prostitute? Whoa, never, he says, never, right? So he's saying, now you may not be sleeping with prostitutes, and that's let's not limit it there, right? But what he's saying is he's saying that our bodies are not meant to be mixed with something sexually immoral, right? That because our bodies are part of Christ's body, we aren't to go around and participate in sexual morality of any kind, right? Would you say that members of Christ are supposed to be mixing with a prostitute? No. Well, you wouldn't say that. And then 16 goes, or do you not know that he who is joined to a prostitute becomes one body with her? For as it is written, the two will become one flesh. So this is a callback to Genesis, right? And Jesus even calls back to Genesis in Mark and Matthew when he talks about divorce, right? He says you can't separate what has been made one, right? And that's why he talks about Jesus has such a strong condemnation for divorce because you're separating what has become one flesh. And so here in this, it says the two shall become one flesh. So he's saying when you do something sexually immoral with, in this case, a prostitute, but it could be anybody, right? Sexual immorality means anything sexual in nature outside of a covenant marriage, right? So anything sexual in nature outside of marriage is sexual immorality. So in this situation, so that could, literally anything. You could even include pornography in that, right? So here is something really interesting. It says, do you not know that who you had joined to a prostitute becomes one body with her? So he's saying whenever we participate in sexual immorality, right, and God made sex for marriage, we are making this bond that was meant for marriage. This chemical, physical bond that God made that we call sex was meant and designed for marriage. And here Paul is saying, whenever you do this with someone who's not your wife, you're actually doing the same thing. You're joining in one flesh with them. Physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. You are joining this bond. And that's such a high view of what sex is. And our culture today wants to make such a low view of sex. It wants to say, oh, it's no big deal. Like, it's just physical. It doesn't mean anything. Like, I'm not bringing anything into this. We can even look back at that song by Eden and goes, it's just sex. But I think I'm catching feelings, right? And so we see it's so hard to separate the two. And Paul is writing that and saying, look, you are becoming one flesh when you do this. But he who is joined to the Lord becomes one spirit with him. And then it ends like this. Flee from sexual immorality. Flee from it. Flee from sexual immorality, Paul says. Every other sin a person commits is outside of the body, but the sexually immoral person sins against his own body. No, this is a unique line that Paul says. He doesn't say this about any other sin, but when you sin sexually, you're sinning against your own body. Or do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God. You are not your own, for you were bought with a price. So glorify God in your body. So the high view we have of our body here, we're not just souls, we're not just minds, we're one. We're soul, mind, heart, body. We're all one, made in the image of God. And if we're Christians, the Holy Spirit lives within us. And God says that if we are to be people who take that seriously, who take that we are part of Christ, that our bodies are part of Christ, and the Holy Spirit lives in us, we're a temple, like, we can't let the sinfulness that culture says that is okay creep in, right? We need to be people that don't see that see sexual immorality as a big deal, right? We cannot separate the physical thing that we want from sex from the personal, right? And in fact, sexual morality affects every part of us. So here's our bottom line. Here's our bottom line tonight. Bottom line is this: sex is more than just a physical act, but an intimate expression of love given by God for marriage. Sex is more than just a physical act, but an intimate expression of love given by God for marriage. And it matters to your body, right? This is in His image. This is like, we've kind of gone along tonight, and I understand that, and I hope I'm not losing you, but I want to kind of wrap up with this. It's more than just a physical act. It's not just a thing that oh, it's like, oops, like, it's no big deal, right? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm not going to get attached. I'm just trying to feel good. Or what if I love them? Well, you're not married to them. And so what you want to do this sexual thing that is not meant for you. Because that builds a bond, that builds a connection that was intended for husband and wife. And what you're doing, you're not that. Especially if you're in middle school or high school, you're not even close to that. And so sex is not just a physical act, right? It's not just something you do because, well, it's time to do it. Or like, well, I feel like, we really do love each other. Well, that's not what God made it for. He didn't make it for for the people you love. He made it for marriage, which you should love, right? That love should be in marriage. But it wasn't just like, oh, you love someone? All right, go ahead and have sex. That's not how God treats sex, right? So what do you do now? What do I do now? Well, maybe you need to take on a new view of sex. Maybe you need to see sex as something holy, something reserved for something great, which is marriage. That it's not something you just do because, well, you want to feel good or you want that pleasure. It's something that really matters, right? Why would Paul say that sexual immorality, unlike anything else, is a sin against your own body? It's unique. It's different, right? Because God made this thing to be something special and unique for married people, and we, as a culture, have destroyed that. Right? We say it's actually not a big deal at all. And somehow we've made it such not a big deal, we've actually made it the thing that we chase the most. So maybe taking a new view of sex. Maybe that means like you give up pornography. Maybe that means you give up that sexual relationship with a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Maybe it means you need to take a new like, you need to make a new commitment that, hey, sex is not going to be something I do flippantly, that it's going to be something I wait until I'm married to do. Right? Maybe you take a new view of sex. And the second thing is this: ask for restoration. Ask for restoration. I understand that there could be people out there in our youth group watching this, hearing this, whatever, whether it's live or later, where you go, hey, I've already sex has been something that I've just seen this way, right? It's always been just something, you do, like, because you want the pleasure from it, like you seek after it, like it's just something I want. Like I've had a low view of it, or it's been the thing that I've chased the most, or maybe I have a porn addiction, and 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 you're going, you know what? I'm feeling convicted right now, and here's what I don't want you to feel. I do not want you to feel shame. If you find that you have been caught in some form of sexual immorality, I don't want you to feel shame at all. I really don't. I want you to be restored. I want you to find that new view of sex. And I want you to ask God to restore you. Say, hey, God, help me see sex from the right perspective. Help me to abstain from it until I'm married. Like I may have screwed up, but Lord, help me from this point on. Or Lord, help me quit porn. Help me finally quit this. Or let me get some help. Let me reach out to some people. I need restoration from this because I bought the lie that culture said that sex is something that you shouldn't be told you can't do or you shouldn't do. And I'm not sitting here saying this is a list of do's and don'ts. What I'm sitting here saying is that God made sex for a specific purpose, and that purpose is in marriage, and that's where you'll experience it the way it was meant to be experienced. And so, with that, maybe you need restoration. Maybe you reach out, you message me, you send me a message on Instagram, or you send me a message on YouTube, or you text me, whatever it needs. You figure out a way, and or maybe there's a friend, good Christian friend, or like another adult, Autumn or Betty or Jackie, whatever, and ask for restoration from God. Pray and let us know you did that, because we want to help you with that. Because in this series, in His image, what we do with our bodies matters. It does. But you are valuable, and God values you. And just because a mistake was made in the past doesn't mean you can't have restoration. So ask for restoration. Let's pray. Lord, thank you so much that you are a good God who loves us so very much. Lord, and that you didn't just make things for no reason or no purpose, Lord, but you designed things for our benefit. Lord, and sex is one of those things, and Lord, I pray that we would have a new view of what sex is like. That it's not something that we do flippantly. It's not just, hey, let's just hook up, or like, oh, it's just porn. But Lord, create in us something new. Restore us. Help us see something new. We ask all this in your name. Amen. All right. With that, we've got some announcements, and then we're going to call it a night. We definitely went long, but that's okay. I'm all good with that. So the first announcement is this. If you are not part of our Remind app, I highly recommend that you be a part of it. You can text GCBCYM to 81010 to get Remind updates. We send those out a few times a week. I try not to spam you, but I want to let you know what things are going on. Leave that up for a second. Hit up, join the Remind. Next, we have some social medias. We have our Instagram account. We have Facebook. We have Twitter that we never use. I don't know why that's still there, but anyway, we have a Twitter account. You can go join it. You can be like our 5th follower or whatever. But Instagram, Facebook, those are our big social medias that we're a part of. We're really killing it on Instagram right now, and I say we're really killing it. I mean, like, we're kind of killing it. Had like 5 likes the other day. So anyway, if you are getting our Remind text, we send out the Zoom code for our Collide small groups on Sunday at 11. You should be there. It's a great time. Join us for our Collide small group Sunday at 11 on Zoom. So you need some kind of cell phone or computer or whatever. If you can use Zoom, you can join our small group. Join the Remind in order to do that. We have online worship on Sunday, 10 o'clock. We post that on the website, grapecreekbc.com. And then on that front page, you can find the worship video for Sunday at 10. Camp, as far as I know, it's still happening, but it may not happen. But it hasn't been canceled yet. So I will keep you posted on everything I know. Since things are starting to open up in Texas, maybe it's a possibility we could have camp, which would be very exciting. The governor did not say whether or not we were going to have camps. We don't know yet, so it's up in the air. But I just wanted to be on your mind that we will be looking to have camp and all that kind of thing if we can make it happen. Cool. All right. With all of that, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you have a great evening. Enjoy your Wednesday. Thank you for watching. Go join our Remind social medias. Share this with your friends if you want. People are always welcome to join this. But hope you have a good night. Thank you, everyone.